saya Tingkilia, lulusan Bangkit 2021. Saat ini saya bekerja sebagai external code reviewer di Decoding Indonesia.
Saya Adi, lulusan Bangkit 2021. Saat ini saya bekerja sebagai Data Science Fellow di Jakarta AI Research.
Saya Bagi Mas, lulusan Bangkit 2021. Sekarang saya bekerja sebagai Data Scientist di Bisa AI.
Halo, saya Dharma, salah satu lulusan Bangkit tahun 2021. Saat ini saya bekerja sebagai external code reviewer di Decoding.
Halo, saya Alia, lulusan Bangkit 2021. Saat ini saya bekerja sebagai Culture Engagement Analyst Intern di CND Niaga.
Halo teman-teman semua, saya Harisno, alumni Bangkit program 2021. Saat ini saya menjabat sebagai CEO dari Jagawana. Dan juga saya bekerja sebagai Data Science di AI Tracking Working Group, sebuah tim riset dari Universitas Gadjah Mada.
Halo, saya Tirsa, lulusan Bangkit 2021. Saat ini saya bekerja sebagai mobile dan cloud developer di Nongsa Digital Park, Batam.
Hai, saya Timotius, lulusan program Bangkit 2021. Saat ini saya berperan sebagai co-founder dan software engineer di Bacara, salah satu top 15 capstone project Bangkit 2021 yang menerima pendanaan inkubasi dari Dikti dan Google.
Berkat Bangkit, saya dan tim telah membuat Jagawana, sebuah startup yang berfokus pada pencegahan penebangan ilegal yang mendapatkan pendanaan dari proses inkubasi Bangkit.
Terima kasih Bangkit, kesempatan belajar selama 6 bulan yang saya peroleh berhasil mengantarkan saya menjadi lulusan dengan predikat distinction di Bangkit 2021.
Bersama tim, saya bisa memberikan dampak di bidang kesehatan dengan membuat aplikasi deteksi dini penyakit demensia yang sudah tersedia di Play Store.
Sekarang saya siap memberikan dampak di bidang kelautan Indonesia dengan machine learning, dengan menjadi bagian dari tim pengembangan AI untuk terumbu karang bersama BRIN dan juga LIPI.
Saya telah berhasil tersertifikasi sebagai Google Associate Android Developer dan siap memberikan kontribusi terbaik di bidang teknologi untuk Indonesia dan dunia.
Terima kasih Bangkit, sekarang saya resmi menjadi Certified TensorFlow Developer.
Sekarang saya menjadi talenta digital dengan kemampuan unggul di bidang cloud computing dan siap memberikan dampak positif pada Indonesia.
Bersama tim, saya bisa menciptakan sebuah produk aplikasi penerjemah bahasa isyarat Indonesia ke dalam bentuk teks dan suara secara langsung.
Terima kasih Bangkit.
Okay, hello guys. Good afternoon everyone. Welcome back to one of your favorite session, guest speaker session. So, how are you guys? Please let me know what are you guys feeling today. Please just drop maybe some word or emoji on the YouTube comment or maybe YouTube chat that describe your feeling today. Maybe you guys are feeling happy or maybe feeling sad or maybe a bit stressed because I know currently you guys are preparing for your final deliverables for your capstone project. It was a bit stressed back then, but I know guys, you guys will make it. Okay, I have seen a lot of your comment. Okay, from Axel. Okay. All right. Firstly, let me introduce myself first. So my name is Ahmad Fatana, usually called Ahmad, and currently I'm a final year student at Hasanuddin University, pursuing in informatics engineering, and also I'm a Bangkit graduate 2022 in the mobile development path, and also I'm a Bangkit mentor for Bangkit 2023 in mobile development path. And yep, today I will be your moderator for our today's session. And yep, today we are in 13 guest speaker session. We are back. Welcome back with topic building a brand that stands out. This will be a good opportunity for you, of course, to help you understand the basic of how to build brand, wonderful brand, where should you put your brand, the segmentation, and also maybe this will be good for you to help you improve your capstone project, like for the future development. And yep, later on we have Q&A session where you can ask anything about our current topic that you're curious about. And keep in mind, guys, don't forget to use, if you want to ask a question, don't forget to use hashtag ask underscore your student ID or your name underscore question. I repeat, if you want to ask a question, don't forget to use hashtag ask underscore your student ID or your name underscore your question. Okay. And yep, guys, because this session will be really insightful, so please stay tuned until this session is end. And also, don't forget to prepare whatever you need to write down something important during the session, because that there will be a lot of important things in the session. Okay, so we have invited Mbak Olavina Harahap. She is Senior Product Marketing Manager at Google. Okay, halo Mbak. How are you today?
Hello, Ahmad. I'm doing good. How are you? Hello,
I'm
everyone.
also good. Okay. Okay, Mbak. I've seen there is a lot of viewers here waiting for you to give them some new knowledge, some insightful. Okay, maybe without any further ado, you can start now, Mbak. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Ahmad. Hello, everyone. Since it's live stream, I cannot really see the faces usually when I do some bangkit meet with bangkit students. I usually can see the face, but hopefully I can see your faces again in other session. So yeah, I was asked to do a session on brand building. My name is Ola, as that Ahmad as Ahmad mentioned earlier. You can call me Ola. If you go on to the next slide, please. I'm gonna do a little bit introduction. So today I'm gonna be sharing about my experience. I'm not a lecturer, but I've been working as a marketing professional for about more than 15 years now. So all of the things that I'm going to share with you today is all the stuff that I learned on the job. I learned also a little bit during my master degree in marketing, but a lot of it is more on the job experience. If you go on to the next slide, there's a saying, right, in Indonesia, kalau tak kenal maka tak sayang. So I'm just gonna share a little bit of background about myself before I go on to brand building. How did I get here? How did I end up in marketing for more than 15 years? Actually, I didn't start in marketing. I graduated from communication science. And then communication usually is about journalism, broadcasting. So I interned in a magazine, Femina magazine. The magazine no longer exists now, unfortunately. So I started out as an intern editor in a magazine called Cita Cinta, if any one of you ever heard, many, many years ago. But then when I graduated, my first job out of graduation was at MTV as an assistant studio manager. So I was kind of into broadcasting after college, but then I realized that hey, maybe I'm not a TV person. I'm not a journalist person. So I moved to an advertising agency called Starcom. It's part of the Publicis Group. It still exists right now. I manage clients such as Procter and Gamble at that time. And in Starcom, I realized that hey, there's a huge world of marketing where if you are part of a brand, you can do a lot of stuff to your users and your consumers. So that's that's the start when I kind of become more interested in marketing. And from Starcom, I moved to Kimberly-Clark. If any of you know the brand Kotex, Huggies, I used to work there for about 2 years, learn about the basics of marketing as an ABM. And then I moved to Holcim, another actually is a manufacturing company, but trying to be like a consumer goods company. So I was a brand person as well there, and then moved to J&J, Johnson and Johnson, for more than 5 years. There I managed all of their brands of like the Johnson's Baby, Listerine, if you Clean and Clear, and Mylanta, before I kind of have a break from school, have a break from working, did my master degree in Northwestern, and then from there going straight to Google and YouTube from 2017 until now. So yeah, it's a long way to get here, but it's all, a lot of it is about experience marketing in different industries. So I hope my experience later on will be useful for you as all of you build your brands with your projects. If you go on to the next slide. So the goal for today is I will share with all of you to understand the basics of brand building. From what I've known so far, a lot of you are engineering background or technical background. Not a lot of you are from like either like a marketing background or management background. So this could be like a teaser of like what marketing is. And as you build your brand with your project, my hope is that you'll build your product or you'll build your solution not just on the technical side, but also on the brand building side, because it's no matter how strong your products is going to be later on from a technical side of it, but if nobody knows about you or nobody knows about your brand, then nobody will ever use the product. So it's such a waste. And secondly, is like the way that I'm gonna do today, I'm gonna share a lot of real life application or like examples from what I've seen, based from what I know. If you guys have any other examples that you want to share with the group, feel free to put it in the chat as well, or share it with me. I would love to see more examples of what I'm sharing later. And last one, it's about discussing and learning. I'm not gonna, as I mentioned, I'm not a lecturer, I'm not a teacher. This is all experiences. Later on, if you have any question, I will try to answer to my best ability. But again, if you guys want to contribute to the discussion, I'm very much open to it as well. Now, next slide. Hopefully, I can get your participation here, even though it's from a chat. When we say brand or merek in your own words, what do you guys what do you have in mind what is a brand? If you can share in the chat, please. Any volunteer or brave soul who want to share there's no right or wrong answer. When I say this is a brand, what is a brand from your point of view? Or if Ahmad want to help me answer as well, it's good. Nobody here can share, or can I not see the answer? Brand means Gregorian. Thank you so much for participating. I'm inviting other than Gregorian, other brave souls of Bangkit here to contribute to the discussion with me, please. Gregorian mentioned brand means product that many people uses. Ivan Fesky says brand is nama perusahaan. Faradila Utami says value of the product. Axel Ramadhani Rusdian Shah, product identity. Nice. I see lots of different variety of answers, which is great. Any other brave souls who want to kind of share their thoughts on what is a brand in your own words? Okay. Brand is a unique identity. All of what you're saying have some truth to it. Like, I'm not saying it's wrong. Brand is gung endik. Brand is the way other people see your product. Oh my gosh, great. It's also true. I think there's no wrong answer here, but there's one definition that I really like about what is a brand. which if you go on to the next slide, there's this definition from expert called Dennis Leon. I really like her definition, which a brand is a promise well delivered. Later in the end, after we go all of the slides, I will kind of go back to this definition. What is a promise well delivered then means to all of you. Now, if you got the next slide again, why a promise well delivered? Because at the end of the day, when we have a brand, what do you call it? Whatever it is, when we have a product and we have the brand, our brand is not the center of the universe. Why? Because our consumer or our users have a lot in their mind. It's an example here. I really like this writer Marketunus. This site called Marketunus. They like to make cartoon stories out of marketing life. And I really like here when they say inside the mind of a consumer, there's like husband, career, mom and dad, kids, travel. If you guys, all of Bangkit students here probably have capstone project, have like exams to fill out, whatever, other stuff, boyfriend, girlfriends. So a brand might be like number 100 something in people's mind. So it's important for us to have a promise and deliver it so that that promise kind of injected in one's mind, even if it's just like a small, tiny portion. If we go to the next slide. Now, the question is, when we say a brand is a promise well delivered, what is the promise and how do we deliver it, right? Now, before we go on into that, I would like to share that a brand has elements. In the next slide, I will share with you that there are 5 elements of a brand. What is elements of a brand? There's like targeting, there's a brand positioning, there's brand identity, there's brand voice, and the final one, there's a brand value or brand promise. Now, when you have a brand later, like you have your own capstone project, all of you have different brands, you need to have all of these elements and have a clear idea what you are and what you are not. And how is that? Let me share it with you one by one, each of these 5 elements. First one is on targeting. We go on to the next slide. Targeting is about who are your consumers or users or customers. Sometimes a company or a brand will call their customers. Sometimes they will use the word consumers. Sometimes they will use the word. Now you need to know who exactly your user or your customer or consumers are. Cannot be just it's female or it's male or it's everyone in Jakarta. You need to be very specific. If you go on to the next slide, a brand targeting, usually a good brand targeting have all of these 4 elements. You need to have a clear what's the geographic definition of your target, what's a demographics definition, what's a psychographic, and what's a behavioral definition. Geographic is definitely, I'm sure all of you will be familiar with, which like where is your consumer? Is it all over Indonesia or just Jakarta or only big cities or only small cities or only rural cities or everyone, or what is that geographic characteristics? Sorry, belibet. Is it in Jakarta only or is it Semarang, Jawa, Bali, Sumatra, Kalimantan, or what? Demographic is male, female, Gen Z, millennials, baby boomers, age, that called demographic. Psychographic is like their underlying psychological background, which I will explain to you more after this. Like, for example, a psychographic definition could be if it's a product of a fast food. The psychographic is those who like healthy lifestyle, or those who like to indulge in like sweet treats. That could be a psychographic. Psychographic and behavioral kind of sometimes mixed with each other. Behavioral sometimes is more visible. Like for example, if you are a McDonald's, a behavioral targeting is that someone who visit McDonald's once a month. Or if you are a telco brand, a behavioral characteristic could be someone who spend 100,000 a month for data packs. So that's our different kind of targeting. To the next slide. The way that I will suggest all of you when you are defining your brand targeting, be as specific and understand the overall population of your users. Like for example, if you are building an app to target SMBs, then what are the population of Indonesian SMBs in total? For example, in here, you should be able to make segmentation of who are your targets and quantify how big are those targets and make a conscious decision of which segment you want to focus on. Like for example, in here, this is just an example. If this is a segmentation of people who likes to run in Indonesia, there are 30% of people who like to run in the segment A, which in a demographic and geographic definition is like this. And then there's segment B, segment C, segment D, and segment E. But then you also need to break it down a little bit further with their behavior. Like for example, in the next slide, what's their monthly spending on internet? What's their average number of topics searched on the internet? What's their interaction with an internet? This might be not a good example for a food product. Sorry, probably this one, it will be good example for an app product, right? If you're an app product, this is a segmentation of different people, different consumer that could be your user. So you need to understand what's the segmentation of your users and make a conscious decision. Okay, then I will focus just on segment B, or I will just focus on segment A and B, because that's the biggest segment there is. It has a lot of opportunity because they have a good monthly spending, or whatever it is, the reason that you choose. Even better, if you can really identify or really personalize your targeting. Like for example, on the next slide, this is just something that I made up. For example, a brand of Airbnb can have different types of segments. A segment of frugal family, business buff, or cozy couple, but then they have different distinct differentiation. And then as an Airbnb, you can choose which target you want to focus on a lot more. Like for example, okay, then because I'm an Airbnb, I'm mostly big houses, I'm mostly not in the city, my location usually not in the city, then probably we should focus on frugal family because they're cost conscious, our price is good, whatever, they have a good average visit per week. All of those different segmentation will by understanding different segmentation and different characteristic and making it personalized, you'll be able to do whatever you want to do later in your marketing or in your acquisition easier, because you have a clear idea of who you want to target. Now that's on targeting. Next one. Oh, before we go on to the next one, I would like to give you an example that brand targeting doesn't necessarily have to conform with everyone. Like if you are a brand of candy, it doesn't mean that you have to only target kids. Or if you are a brand of an app for farming, it doesn't have like you can think creatively of who can be your target so that you have a unique advantage versus other players in the market, especially if your solution or your product is not something new in the market. This is an example of what I think is unique, where it's a brand of Pampers, baby diapers. Usually, baby diapers target what? Moms, right? And Pampers, being a brand that is more than 100 years old, probably, they've done targeting to moms all their life. And I guess at this time of the year when they launch this campaign, they want to do something different and do a different targeting. Instead of moms, they target someone else. If you can play the ads here, which is interesting.
Somebody's got a stinky woo. I'm gonna need some backup on this one. Guys? Somebody got a stinky, so stinky booty.
It's a stinky booty.
It's so stinky.
And Daddy's gonna clean it up.
Oh, hey, Chrissy.
Must we do this every time?
So this is an example of a brand trying to have a unique targeting. Instead of doing what other brands are doing, which is targeting moms, they try to be a little bit more cheeky and target dads. So as you build your brand and as you build your product, is there a way that you can have a significant differences in the way that you target your audience, but still relevant? Because in here, if they just do target like any other man, it won't make sense. But they specifically point out that they are targeting the dads, right? So it's uncommon, but it makes sense and it still work. So before we go on to the next part of the element of the brand, I would like all of you who are working on your capstone project right now, do you have a targeting that is strong enough? And is there a way that you can have a unique targeting in your product? Next one.
Hi, baby boy.
Next one is identity. Identity is all about what the consumer, users, or customer see in your product. And what do your customers see is usually on the next slide is your logo, is your color, what's your font, what's your icon, what images they're seeing. I work on YouTube, and at YouTube, usually we have this repository site of all the brand guidelines and so to ensure that our identity are consistent everywhere around the world. So as you build your brand, make sure that when you have a logo, you stick to it. Do not have a square logo here, but then in other places you have a rectangle logo, or in one place your logo, your icon or your brand is in blue color, in other part it's like a light blue color. Your identity should always be consistent and same. And it's not to say that you cannot not change your identity. There are instances where brands change their identity, but then you need to make a deliberate action or initiative to make sure that people will recognize it when you change your identity. And usually brands who change their identity will not change it like once every year. Like probably they will do it once every 20 years or something. So as you build your solution, your apps, have a clear idea on like what's your identity, what color you want to use, what logo you want to use, what font you want to use, what imagery you want to use, and make sure everywhere you are seen to your user or your customers or your consumers, they will see it the same. Next one. The third one on the brand elements is brand positioning. Brand positioning is basically where we want to be relative to the competition, just like the word position, right? And like that picture. Where, like when you are not the first player in the market, I'm sure there's other players around you that are playing in the same category. Are you going to be another one that is just providing the same thing? Or are you going to provide an edge? And what is that edge? And how do you position that in the market? For example, on the next one, the way that you can do positioning is by, sorry, before I say that, before I go on to the matrix, it's okay. The next one, I like again this Market Tunis article that says about brand positioning. Go on to the next slide. It says we should differentiate our brand just as long as we differentiate in the exact same way of all our competitors. I hope none of you here, when you guys discuss with your fellow group mates, you are doing this thing. They're trying to make fun of, like, there are brands who exist in the market who try to differentiate, but at the end, they don't differentiate at all. They're just exactly the same. Now, how can you differentiate? If you go on to the next slide, one way is to build like this matrix of like whatever specific characteristic that you want to identify, or how you want to place yourself in the market. In this example, it's about pricing and quality matrix. There's brands that has low price and high price. There's brand with low quality to high quality. Where are your competition and where do you want yourself to be? You should be able to map this out. Another example is, for on the next slide, is mapping between the different types of product. Is it a traditional product or is it an innovative product? Is it a luxury product or is it a value for money product? And then you can put different brands within this matrix and see where you want to fall into it. Like, where are your competitor brands? Where are your current brand situation? Or where do you want it to be if it's not yet on an ideal situation? Just to give a little bit of example, this is the one I found on the internet. It's a positioning for fashion brand. If you go on to the next slide, there's a positioning map for brands that are cool and not cool, from sporty to street, and then there's different brands here on where they fall within this mapping. You may agree or disagree with how they are placing the brands here, but this is how I don't know who make this. Probably this is made by another brand that is not on the chart, and they're trying to enter this fashion market, and they were trying to figure out where they should be. Looking at this, for example, you see like the gap is on the cool and sporty one, because there's only one player there. There's only Jordan, who's on the area of like cool and but at the same time sporty, while the area of cool but street, there's a lot more brands in it. So because I want to stand out in the market, then I should put myself on that area, so that when I build my product, when I build my solution, I will always have in mind that our product should be sporty and cool, because I want to play in this area where there's not a lot of players currently in. So that's why brand positioning is important. is to make sure that you are clear of where you are in your set of competition and where you want to be, and also to monitor whether your competition are still where they are. Like, for example, to monitor over time if for example they change their positioning, or if no brands comes in the market. The way that this mapping work helps you to kind of make sense of where things are and where you want to be. Now, on the next slide is on voice. Brand identity is like what you really see when you encounter a brand. But brand voice is something that the way I describe it is what you see, quote unquote, because if we go into the next slide, brand voice is not literally voice or sound that you speak or you tell to your user. If you go on to the next slide, brand voice is actually personality that you want your consumers to know and love. The personality needs to be consistent over time, and that personality, the purpose is to humanize the brand so that people can relate. And then this brand voice, the idea is to make sure that there's some kind of emotion that you want to infuse to your users. They can encapsulate it, like what feeling you want your user to feel when they talk about your brand. Do you want them to feel happy when they talk about your brand, or do you want them to feel empowered, or do you want them to feel help, or do you want them to feel that they can trust you? That kind of messaging comes from the brand voice. Now, I understand it's probably hard to kind of grasp on what it is. So I think that it will be easier for me to share example. If you go on to the next slide, this is an example of a brand in the US, a brand of deodorant. It's a man deodorant. I'm sure you guys know it's Axe. Now, the voice of this brand in the US is this youthful, friendly, approachable kind of personality with like a little bit twist of like humor. If we can play the video here.
Hey, how you doing, baby? You look mighty fine. I figured I might come your way and roll up on you with that golden ticket. Shawty, can I get your digits, baby? We can kick it. Hey, just wait till all my.
Smell irresistible. The new Axe effect.
Yes, if I can say that, what's Axe trying to say with their voice? It's that they're trying to say that we're fun, we're colorful, we're like quirky, we are a little bit humorous, and we're like upbeat, right? With the kind of voices, the kind of music that they're using, and this kind of voice, they show in the US. And a brand voice should be consistent everywhere, across countries. If you go on to the next slide, when you see their ads of the same brand X, but in Indonesia, they have a different brand, but the voice is kind of similar. If you play.
I
I just took a test, it sounded like my shit go stupid. Little bitch, I got like 10% more left on my to-do list. I roll by with my old car, it's a group, his name is Lucas. Mimosa with my old girl, fight Renee, that pussy boom. And I took that flight and got a pay back, man, they should've self-taxing. I said goals and bit it like Jackson, black on black, my shit from Paxson. You not fire, homie, just guessing phone. Going through my IG top requests, these souls tripping like banana pills. I'm raining up and down the road. Pussy ball like Joe Rogan, take your phone away. That bitch tryna get photos, shoving me logo, tipping on photos, back to the bathroom.
It's not the exact same ads. It's different types of like hip hop song. It's a different types of talent that they're using, but I can see consistency in their voice. They're trying to be youthful. They're trying to be like, look that they're like a fun brand. Another example that I want to show is that brand voice should also be consistent over time. Meaning, like, if you say your brand voice is one thing today, it should be the same 5 years from now. One brand that is good in terms of doing this is the example that I saw from a US brand called Old Spice. If you go on to the next slide, it's another deodorant brand. I don't know why, just a lot of deodorant brand. This brand is called Old Spice. It's similar to Rexona, it's similar to Axe, but it's available in the US. And this brand already in the market for many, many, many years. And 12 years ago, they kind of want to rebrand themselves to become this more youthful kind of brand. And they launched this ad to show to their user who they are. If you can play the video.
Hello, ladies. Look at your man. Now back to me. Now back at your man. Now back to me. Sadly, he isn't me. But if he stopped using lady-scented body wash and switched to Old Spice, he could smell like he's me. Look down. Back up. Where are you? You're on a boat with the man your man could smell like. What's in your hand? Back at me. I have it. It's an oyster with 2 tickets to that thing you love. Look again. The tickets are now diamond. Anything is possible when your man smells like Old Spice and not a lady. I'm on a horse.
So this was an ad that they launched 12 years ago. And they're trying to portray that their voice is this manly product, but then still fun and quirky. And this is, if you go on to the next slide, I will show you their ad from a year ago.
You know, playing the God of Thunder is electrifying. A lot of people think that me and him look like brothers. Cousins, maybe.
I am worthy. Thor has his weapons. I have my Old Spice. Never let the crowd see you sweat. I am worthy. Lower, Gary.
Old Spice. Marvel Studios Thor, Love and Thunder, only in theaters July 8th.
Now, even then, like, there's a 10-year gap between that first ad you saw in this ad, 11 years gap. But I can see that their voice is still consistent. They want to be like, this voice is about this manly looking brand with lots of muscle, with lots of personality, and also that quirkiness. I want to hear it from you guys here. Do you kind of have any other brand that you think have a consistent brand voice? If you have any brands that you think is interesting to share, I would love to hear it on the chat as well. But this is just another example that I've encountered on brand voice. So to summarize on brand voice, it's all about consistency and it's all about personality. So I'm sure this one is like new for you because you just built your brand. But now, as you build your brand, make sure you already have a clear idea of what your voice should be and try to bring that voice all the way throughout your journey until the day that the brand dies, hopefully never, so that consumers will always remember you for what you are, like remember what you stands for as a brand. Now, the next one, the fourth one on brand elements is promise. Sorry, this is the last one, the fifth one. The last one is brand value or brand promise. Brand value or brand promise is about what do you want them to get out of you? If you go on to the next slide, in here, I want to share with you that brand promise is, next slide, please. Brand promise is not the same as feature or benefits. Sorry, it's a bit cut in this one. It's actually brand promise not equal to feature and benefit. Feature and benefits is attributes that your product provide. But brand promise is actually the unique value that you're trying to provide. An example here that I want to share is a brand of ponds. Which one do you think is a brand promise? Which one do you think is a feature or benefit? Tea tree, or for a Pond's brand, tea tree oil that gives anti-acne, and B, radiant skin no matter what your skin is facing. Which one is the brand promise, A or B? Anyone can. Marjan syrup, the one, oh yeah, Marjan is always funny and always quirky and always comes every Ramadan, right? I agree with you, Gregorian. Now, within A and B, which one do you think is a brand promise and which one is a benefit? Which one is a brand promise, A or B? If anyone can help me answer on the chat. And second one is on Toyota. There's pre-collision braking system for your safety driving. And B is a superior peace of mind. Which one is a brand promise between A and B from these two brands that you see on the screen? If anyone can help me answer. Thank you, Emma Kujayama. Yes, you're absolutely correct. It's a B. It's not A is not as unique as any brand can have, but B is rather unique for the brand itself. Exactly. Tea tree oil, anti-acne. Every brand can have a tea tree oil and anti-acne, and they can not be called a copycat because anyone can have that, right? But radiant skin, no matter what your skin is facing, it's something probably only Pond's is saying, right? Other brands, like for example, Dove or whatever, Skin Clean and Clear, can say something different. Nadia B, yes, all of you are correct. The B is something that is unique only to you, and it's a homework. It's not easy to find your brand promise. You need to really know what your feature and benefits and know what you want to kind of convey to your user, and then articulate that into a promise. I'm telling you, it's not easy, but then as you know your brand, as you know your users, and as you kind of reiterate more and more, you will find the right brand promise for your brand. The next one on brand promise is also not a tagline. If you go on to the next slide, in here I have two examples, McDonald's and Nike. McDonald's have make delicious feel good moment easy from everyone, and there's I'm loving it. Nike has a promise of bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. And then they have a brand tagline of just do it. So just do it and I'm loving it. It's not a promise, it's a tagline. So promise is the promise, as I mentioned earlier, is a unique value that your product is trying to provide for your users or your consumers. Now, you can say another way that you can build your brand promise. There are different ways that you build your brand promise. There's no one set ways to do it. If you go on to the next slide, a brand promise can be something that are emotional or something that could be functional as well. There's no right or wrong. It's about the choice that you make for your brand. Like for example here, the brand promise of Burger King is to offer reasonably priced quality food served quickly in an effective and clean surroundings. It's very functional. Like they want to give you food that are good price, good quality, served quickly and in a clean surrounding. It's a complete opposite of what McDonald's is saying. McDonald's brand promise is serving delicious food, feel good moment food, easy for everyone. It's very emotional. They're not talking about the taste, they're not talking about the service, they're talking about the feeling. And that's another way of doing a brand promise too. It's no right or wrong. It's a matter of which choice you want, which route you want to go. Another way to do brand promise, it can be also in the next slide. It can be product centric or it can be consumer centric. Two examples, again, two opposite examples that I'm showing here is Adidas and Nike. They have very different approach. Adidas is very product centric. Nike is very consumer centric. And why is that? Adidas says to be the best sports brand in the world. And if you go on to the more bottom of their site, they say that we built the best shoes, we built the best apparel, we built the best sports accessories. So it's all about serving the best product for their customers. As opposed to Nike, they're saying that we bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. They're talking not necessarily the product, they put their consumers in the center instead of the product. So it's a two different thing again, two different value, two different promise, no right or wrong. It's a matter of where you want to be in the situation. If we go on to the next slide. Now, before I go on to the so what, on that brand value and promise, I would say my suggestion to you, all of you who are right now trying to build your brands, think very long and hard on what you want to be your promise to your users are. Because again, go back to the beginning, a brand is a promise well delivered. That promise is what you will always carry in whatever you do, and you try to deliver that. And the way that you deliver is by providing a great product, a great service, a great experience, or whatever it is. But then you always have something to latch onto. What are we trying to do with our product? What are we trying to serve with our product? You can always go back to your brand promise of what you want to do. Now, so what, right? After you all see that, okay, I know that brand has to have identity, have to have positioning, have to have a voice, have to have a value or a promise. Then so what? If I already know this is what my brand elements are. Now, in the next one, what you need to do, I summarize it in a very simplistic way. What you have to do is three things. We go on to the next slide. First one, at the end of the day, after you know all of those elements of your brand, you need to tell the world about it. Because if you have a very great logo, great naming, great identity, great voice, great promise, but nobody knows, then it's also a waste. Now, you need to tell to the world in three ways. One, make sure that you show up and reach your consumer at scale, at the right time, and through the right channel. And this can be done in multiple ways, right? You can use your own social media, for example, or you can use paid marketing, for example, or you can use influencer to talk about your brand. There's many ways to reach your consumer or user, but at the end of the day, regardless of the channel, you want to reach a scale, meaning you're not just reaching like 1% of your potential audience or potential consumer. In whatever plan that you're doing for your brands in the future, you need to build up a plan that reach a scale so that a lot of people knows about you. And second one is time. When you have a plan to reach your consumers, don't do it just one time and then tomorrow you'll be gone. Like, I think that's a problem where a lot of brands invest, like in the beginning, a lot of money, but then they do it only like for 1 month or 2 months, and then they're gone for the rest of the year and people forget about them. So I guess within your brand building activities later on, as you build your brand, make sure that you invest over time and not one time only. And last one is that you want to know whether you're succeeding or not in building your brands, right? So my suggestion is you need to make sure that you track your progress and you measure how you're doing over time and optimize along the way. Track progress can be in multiple different ways. Like, for example, you do a consumer research, or you do a qualitative research, or you do a survey in whatever channels. And then once you have that result of where you are, where your brand at, and then if it's not in the position that you want it to be, then you need to have some kind of optimization so that it will be where you want it to be. And so that's what I mean by optimizing along the way, is that you may not get to where you are at at one go, and you need to kind of test and learn, experiment, and that's all right. You need to do that because it's a journey. You need to your brand building is a journey. It's not like a one-off thing. So that's my final last slide on this one. If you go on to the next slide, my hope is that whatever I've been rambling about in the last, I don't know, 40 minutes inspires you a little bit as you build your own brands. And if you have any questions, comments, feel free to put it on the comments, and or later on connect with me on LinkedIn or on social media as well. It's okay.
Okay, wow. That was really insightful, Mbak Olivina. Thank you so much for the presentation. Okay, maybe next we can jump into the next session, which is Q&A session. Okay, guys. Again, I will give you a reminder. If you want to ask a question, don't forget to use hashtag ask underscore your ID or your name underscore your question. Okay. Okay. So right now I have seen we have one question on the YouTube chat. Okay, it's from Emma Hujaima. So the question is, how do we find our own brand and convey it appropriately when introducing ourselves in a CV or a job interview at a company?
Interesting question. Emma, I hope I understand your question correctly. So you have a brand and you want to convey it in your CV or interview, right? It's the brand is something that you already built. It's not you as the brand, right? If you have a brand and you want to say to yourself, convey it appropriately when speaking to someone on the CV, my suggestion is to exercise an elevator pitch. I'm sure everyone have heard about the elevator pitch, right? So elevator is like when you go from one floor to another floor, and usually it takes what, 10 seconds or 15 seconds to go to one floor to another floor. Now, if you can practice saying what's your brand, what's your product, and what's your value in 10 to 15 seconds, and write it down in your CV, that would be my suggestion for you. But again, it's a writing, right? Maybe a writing in a CV may not do justice of like what your brand is really is. So I would also suggest on like providing like a link or an additional information of where to find more about your brands, right? If it's a social media channel or a YouTube video or a website. So put that in your CV or interview so that they can, when they're intrigued with your elevator speech in text, they can go somewhere. I hope that's helpful.
Okay. Hope that answered your question, Emma. Okay, maybe we can jump into the next question. It's from Nadia. How do you measure the success of brand building efforts?
Yes. Very good question again. Thank you, Nadia, for your question. How do you measure the success of brand building? In marketing world, usually it's always about going back to the consumer or going back to the user. So you have to measure it by having some kind of tracking. And that tracking can be done qualitatively or quantitatively. It can be done on your own, or it can be done using a third party like a research agency. The way that you can do it on your own is, for example, if you do a Google form survey or a survey monkey to your users, right? Or if you work with a research agency, they will usually has a list of questions that they usually use whenever they're trying to ask about a brand health of a brand. This tracking of brand building usually called brand health tracking. How healthy is your brand? How how familiar are people with your brand? They will have a list of questions that they give out to the potential user of your product, and they will come back with you the result. Another way that you can do it is, and that research company usually can do it both ways. Either they do it quantitatively or they do it qualitatively. Quantitatively meaning like they send out a survey and you will come back with like a quantitative result, like 90% of users knows about your brand, or 90% of users know that your brand is cool, something like that. But then if it's a qualitative survey, then the result might be more nuanced. The result might be smaller in base in terms of respondent, but you get more rich feedback of what your product or what your brand building, what your users think about your brand from a qualitative statements, not numbers. When you do it yourself, there's a lot of survey out there, right? There's like you can do it yourself, like if you build your own survey and then you send it to your community or your database of users, that can be one thing. Or for example, you use third-party tools like SurveyMonkey or Google Customer Survey or whatever it is. There's different ways of doing surveys on your own. You just have to be creative in doing it.
Okay, hope that answered your question, Nadia. Okay, let's jump into the next question. It's from Jason Suhal. Okay, how can we consistently deliver high quality products or services that align with our brand promise?
Thank you, Jason. My suggestion is to always continue to, as a product, as a marketer, you need to always talk to user over time. You need to really know them inside out. When you know them inside out, you know if your product is still good or now it's not good enough. Like, for example, users evolve, right? Consumers evolve. Today, you talk to them and say, hey, is my product good? They will say good because I'm a student. I like your product. And then 2 years from now, I'm no longer that user is no longer a student. Now they're like a first jobber and their life has changed and your product is no longer fitting to them. Do you want to stay in this position because anyway your product is not for first jobber, my product is for university students, so I won't change? But actually if your product is also for a first jobber and they say that your product is no longer serving your needs, then you need to do something with your product so that your product is serving both the university student and the first jobbers, right? So make sh- so my suggestion or my recommendation is, Jason, use your brand promise, talk to users, show your product, whether the product and brand promise connected, and whether that still serve the users wants in your in the users wants right now, and do it consistently over time, like for example every 3 months or every 6 months or every year, so that you consistently measure and track whether your product is still good enough or not.
Okay, hope that answered your question, Jason. Okay, let's jump into the next question. It's from Ivan Fesky. So, how to manage brand without plagiarism? Example, ayam geprek bensu have issue in brand plagiarism.
Tough question. Thank you, Ethan. Yeah, I'm sure it's hard right now. I would say my suggestion is you need to be very aware of your competition, know what's their strengths, what their weaknesses, what's their offering, how they look like, so that you are not going to be accused of plagiarism, right? But then if you are feeling like, hey, am I potentially plagiarism here, then my suggestion is consult with an expert, like for example, a copyright lawyer or whatever it is, to make sure that you're not breaking any rules. But at least start within your competition, and check what are they already saying out there, so that you're not saying the same thing or not using the same thing.
Okay, so we should be aware to analyze our competitor before we create a product. Okay, hope that answered your question, Ivan Pesky. Okay, maybe we can jump into the next question. It's from Netanya Pinka. So, how do you ensure that your brand remains relevant to the consumers, considering the changing consumer trends? At what point should the brand change, and to what extent?
Yeah, thank you. This is a very relevant question, and definitely consumers trends will change, consumers will change. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't change your product. You should definitely adapt and improve your product to evolve and continue to serve your consumer needs. But again, I will always go back to what my brand promise and what's my vision. If the consumer trends is A, but when I do A, it will deviate from my brand promise or not no longer relevant from my brand promise, then don't do it just for the sake of following the trend. Let me try to find an example. So okay, right now, a lot of brands are into TikTok. Not into K-pop, sorry. A lot of brands are into K-pop, right? And a lot of brands are trying to incorporate K-pop in their communication. But for example, a brand like Jaguar, for example, the brand of car of Jaguar may not be able to respond to the trend of K-pop, because the majority of people who likes Jaguar probably are not K-pop consumers. So you need to kind of strike that right balance of following trends and what's true to your brand. If it's not your personality, then don't do it. That's like a communication standpoint. Same with like a feature standpoint. Like for example, the trend is right now, if for example you're an app that is about serving SMBs, and then the trend right now is about dancing to different trend, like dancing, your hand dancing, for example, and you want to incorporate that hand dancing into your app, it doesn't make sense because your app is about SMB, right? I'm just giving like a very wrong example, like nobody will ever do that, but it just give you kind of an example of like, if a consumer trend is significant enough and it's still relevant with your brand promise and what your product offering, then yes, change. But if it's not, do not sacrifice your brand vision, your brand promise, and your product offering just for the sake of following the trend.
Okay, hope that answered your question, Natalia.
Yes.
Okay, maybe we can jump into the next question. It's from Gregorian. So, how does one thrive in those situations when there's that one brand that dominate the intersection, or it's been oversaturated by many brands?
Okay. There's two questions here, I think, Gregorian. The first one, how to thrive when there's one brand that dominate the entire section, or there's too many brand in one section, right? So my suggestion is, for the first one, is that you need to evaluate again, I guess, like, what are they doing, and is there gaps that domination haven't dominate yet? Like, are they dominating in everything? Like, for example, are they dominating in their communicate, like in their marketing dollars, but they're not dominating in their distribution, for example? Then you have a conscious decision of, okay, we're not going to compete with you in the area of paid marketing, but we'll make sure that our distribution is better than you. Something like that. You need to kind of really dissect what's going on out there, and when they dominate, in what areas are they dominating, and is there a way that you can dominate in other areas so that you are not fighting head to head in one place, but you are playing in, like, competing in another area. That's my suggestion. Maybe right or maybe wrong, but that's my suggestion on, like, how to still compete when there's one brand on dominating. I'm sure there's different gaps here and there that you can still have a play, have a role, and have a strength, and that's your homework to find that out, of like, where can you compete, right? And then if it's saturated by many brands, then it's a matter of, like, a question for you as the owner, whether you still want to play in this area, you still want to compete, considering there's so many different players. And if you still think that it's worth to fight, even though there's so many different players, then you need to think creatively, what areas I can be different.
Okay, thank you. I think it's about brand positioning where you have mentioned before.
Yes, agree.
Okay.
Yeah, like, if there's so many different players already in one area, is there any still, like, empty area that you want to be in?
Yeah.
If it's all crowded, then you have to rethink, is it worth still doing business in this area or not?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Hope that answered your question, Gregorian. Okay, let's jump into the next question. It's from Reynard Matthew Yaputra. So, what do you think about a brand that riding the wave of another bigger or more famous brand trend? Are their brand have a good position in the market?
What do you think? I think it's, dalam bahasa Indonesianya tuh kayak, ya sah-sah aja ya. Ada, kalau there's a brand that want to do that, that's their conscious choice. But with that choice comes risk as well, right? The risk is that, one, they will be misattributed. If they follow what famous brand are doing, you might end up helping that brand becomes bigger instead of growing your brand, because they will misattribute you, and because they're already doing it earlier and you just following, and they will not know you, but they will know this other brand better because people already know about this brand before you do. So for my personal opinion, you can definitely do that, but definitely there's a risk to do that. But if there's a way that you able to follow but then differentiate in some ways of sorts, then it's your call, it's your strategy, and it's your right to try. But know that there are risks as well. Are their brand have a good position in the market? I don't know. Yeah, I don't. If anyone here can have a comment, I don't know where there's a brand that have a good, like for example, McDonald's and Burger King, right? They're exactly the same. They're like providing burgers and fries, but they talk very differently. Even though their color is similar, red and yellow, for example, right? But the way they communicate, the way that they show their product, their identity, their personality is so much different. So there are instances where some part of the brand elements are the same, but they still differentiate in other ways so that people can really distinct one from the other.
Okay, thank you. Hope that answered your question, Reina.
Yep.
Okay, we move on into the next question. It's from Razan. So, what metrics and indicators can be used to measure the success and effectiveness of a brand in standing out from competitors?
Thank you, Razan. In marketing, we call it, when I mentioned earlier about brand health metrics. There's a in brand health metrics, usually they will measure be using the marketing funnel. There's a marketing funnel. If you Google after this, marketing funnel is usually the shape of the upside down triangle. There's awareness, there's consideration, and there's intent, purchase intent or usage intent. Now, when you have a brand and you come into the market, first thing you want to do is make sure people are aware of your brand. Once they're aware, they need to consider you as part of their repertoire of choice. Once they put you in their consideration, they need to have an intent to use or buy your product. And all of this you can measure through research. Like, for example, the way this works is like, for example, again, I'm using an easy example of brand of Nike and Adidas. When people ask you, Ahmad, what brand do you know of a shoe brand? And Ahmad will say, Adidas, Nike, Kasogi, Puma, Under Armour. You can mention 10 brands. Means that you're aware of 10 brands. But then when I ask you again, which brand you consider to buy, Ahmad will only say, oh, I will only consider to buy Under Armour, Nike, and Adidas because I know they're the quality. But then when I ask you again, Ahmad, which one do you want to buy if you need a new shoes? Then Ahmad will say, oh, I will only buy Nike because the price is good for me, for example. Then your purchase, that means you have an intent to buy Nike. All of those different funnels you can measure and know from your brand, like how many % of your customers aware about you, how many of your customer consider you as part of their choice, and how many of them will actually buy you and have an intent to buy you whenever they have the need. So the metrics could be that one, like an awareness indicator, a consideration indicator, and an intent indicator. Of course, there are also other different metrics out there, but this is the most basics one.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Okay, hope that answered your question, Razan.
Yes.
Okay, we move on to the next question. It's from Wibi Anto. Do you think it's a good idea to build community while growing a brand from zero? Is there any correlation between the two?
I think it's a good idea. I'm sure as you build your brand, you need users, right? And if you there's definitely benefit in making your users one community, like a community of those who like Nike, or a community of those who like whatever, Tokopedia, right? There's it's a good idea to build a community while growing our brand, but I guess it's just gonna be more harder when you build it from zero, right? Because at the beginning, your community will not really know about you, so you will need to educate them a lot more so that they want to be part of your community. uh yeah, so it's a good idea. It's going to be harder when you do it from zero, but it's not a bad idea.
Okay, so relation is really important if you want to grow our brand, right, Miss?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can do it. You can. The correlation is that you can do it, but it's just gonna be harder when you build a community with like zero awareness of the brand, right? Or very small awareness of the brand. Meaning like your community maybe start from a small, very very small or niche community, but as your brand grows bigger, your community becomes bigger as well. So probably it's going to be hard at the beginning because you have zero awareness or like very small awareness, but it's not impossible.
Okay. Okay, hope that answered the question, Wibi Anto. Okay, we move on to the next question. It's from Nadia again. So the question is, what role does influencer marketing play in shaping a brand's image and reaching new audiences?
What role does an influencer marketing play in shaping brand image? Um, an influencer, when they work for you, they will work based on a brief, right? They will not just like when people, hey, talk about your brand, they will ask from you, hey, what should I talk about, right? They will ask for a brief, and then you will have a brief of like what they can and cannot say, what they can and cannot do when it comes to your brand. So they will, but then influencer will also have their own personality, right? So when you give a brand brief to an influencer, usually they will follow it, but they will also inject their own personality to make it look natural, right? And still relatable for their user. So there's a potential that their personality is not what you're looking for. So I guess choosing the right influencer that is aligned with what image you want to portray is important, so that if they inject their own personality, it will not hurt your brand. For example, um, you are a brand of um, maybe if you are a brand that detect fraud, and you and you use an influencer who is a comedian, for example, then if they deliver your message in a comedic way, you will lose that credibility of a fraud brand, right? Like, who wants to be handled on a fraud with someone who's not looking serious? This is like a very extreme example, but I'm just giving it for your reference, so that the way that you make sure when you do an influencer marketing, make sure that their image, like whatever their image, will not hurt your brand.
Okay, thank you. I hope that answered the question, Nadia. Okay,
Yeah.
because I see we have no question left on the YouTube chat. Maybe while we waiting for you guys to asking a question, maybe it's my turn to ask a question because I also have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so based on the five elements of brand that you have mentioned before, my favorite is when you talk about brand voice, where the consumer give personality and emotion to the product, right? And my question is, what factors should a company consider when defining its brand voice, and why are these factors important?
Tough question.
Oh,
I think when determining a brand voice, again, positioning helps. Like, in what, where do you want to sit within the competition? Like previously, right? Do you want to be the cool one or the not cool one, or do you want to street, or do you want to be sporty? Do you want to be high value or luxury? That will also determine your brand voice. Another thing that you might want to consider as well in terms of personality is, again, talking to your users of like, when they talk about your category, what actually they're looking for. Like, for example, if I'm a brand of hospitals, for example, I'm just making it. If I'm a brand of hospital, do you want a brand act like a serious doctor, a young doctor, or like a doctor that is also your friend, or a doctor that is like a professor that is 65 years old but is very knowledgeable? You need to talk to your user and see what's out there, and whether you want to fill that gap that is not yet served. So try, like, I again goes back to talking to your consumers, talking to your users, and see where's the gap that exists in the market, and see whether your product or your brand can fill those gaps with your brand voice. If that,
okay.
I hope that answers.
So like where before we create a product, like we need to do some survey, like to know what maybe what people needs.
For sure. Just like when you build apps, right? You need data, right? You need data to back your whatever engineering development you're doing. Similarly, when you build a brand, you also need data on what brand will be the best for you. And how do you get that data? Is by talking to consumers, talking to your users, and doing that research and user study, not just the UI and the UX, but also like the emotion, the needs, the internal needs that they have, that your product is going to solve.
Okay. Okay, so talking about target audience, I have a question about that.
Yes.
So, uh, what are some effective strategies for conducting market research to understand target audience and their preferences?
Mm, what are the right, so your question, how to get the right market research to do targeting?
Yeah, like the strategies. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would start with defining the population of your product. So, for example, if your product is an app to pay for e-money, for example, right? If you're an e-money product, then your target audience is those who are, um, what do you want to define it? Is your audience is those who have phone, like smartphone, that's your target audience, or those who are actually do not have a bank account? That's why e-money will help them. There's different ways to define your population, total population of your audience. And once you define that population, you can dissect it a little bit more. Like, for example, in the case that of that e-money, okay, then I want those who are my, I want to target everyone. My population is everyone who has a smartphone, because everyone who has a smartphone can pay with e-money, for example. But then within that everyone who has smartphone, there's those who have smartphone that are very old Android or very new Android, or in the middle, right? And then which one do you want to kind of capture? Which one is the biggest? And then what else? What other classification you want to add. After that Android level, is it you want them to have a phone that is above 2 million, and then both a phone that is cheaper than 2 million or something like that? What other classification, like make those classification from one big population and try to dissect it so that you can have that different segments. And then after you can dissect that different segments, then it's your call to determine, okay, within these three different groups, I want to focus on group A because the reasons of ABC. Again, there's when it comes to positioning, there's not positioning. When it comes to targeting and segmenting, which segment you chose to focus on, there's no right or wrong answer. It's a matter of which one you want to focus on, and therefore whatever you're doing in your product, in your communication, in your future development of your product should answer the problem of this segment.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer, Mbak Olavina.
Thank
So I
you.
think that's all from me. And okay, and I see we still have no question left on the YouTube chat. So I think that would be all for our today's session. So for the conclusion, maybe again, guys, if you want to build a wonderful brands, don't forget to consider 5 elements of a brand, which is brand targeting, uh, and then brand positioning, like the where the area you want to play, and then brand identity, how your customer know your product, and then brand voice, and then the last one is brand value or promise. Okay. Again, thank you so much, Mbak Olavina Harahap, for the such a nice presentation.
Thank
Maybe
you.
you have like a closing statement for us.
Closing statement would be good luck in building your brands. All of you are now working on your capstone project. I've seen a couple of projects because I help mentor as well, and I'm very pleasantly surprised with the kind of solution that your guys are building. And then my last message is that as you build your product, your project, your solution, as someone from marketing, my suggestion is to start thinking about the brand as well, not just the product. And because like as you build your product and when you do it together, then it's my personal opinion is that your product and brand is going to be so much stronger versus like you just built the product without thinking about what's the brand going to be. It should kind of build hand in hand from the start, and you're now building the product. Please start also thinking what brand you want to put to market.
Okay, thank you so much, Mbak Olavina, for the closing statement. Once again, thank you, Mbak Olavina, for bringing this session for the presentation, and also thank you so much, guys,
Thank you
for
everyone for the
joining
questions.
the session. Okay, maybe that's all from me. Thank you, guys. See you in next opportunity. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.